Thank you for joining us. The topic today is lessons learned from Salesforce-ERP integrations at medical device manufacturers. So we're really happy to have with us today Bill Symans. Bill is president and co-founder of Saxa Solutions. He is a certified Salesforce administrator, Sales Cloud consultant, Salesforce developer, PMP, and he is an expert as well with Scribe Online. So he's got a lot of great background to bring to the topic today. He has helped many medical device companies implement Salesforce and leverage the Scribe integration platform to integrate with myriad of back office systems. And he's going to share a lot of those lessons learned that he has picked up through many deployments with us today. So I'm just here to kick things off and manage the Q&A. I'm going to hand it over to Bill for the meat of the presentation here. So Bill, why don't you take things over?
Sure, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. My name is Bill Symans, the president and co-founder at Saxa Solutions. Thank you for the introduction. I appreciate that. Today we're going to talk about integration patterns for medical device manufacturers specifically, but a lot of things we'll talk about apply to a number of different use cases. We're going to start off by talking about an overview of the integration, so the different types of patterns that we can look at, and then we're going to step through each one of those patterns. We're going to talk about the types of integrations that we see and we recommend to our customers, some of the reasons, the business cases for those integrations, and then some of the challenges and things to consider, lessons learned with each one of those integrations. We'll talk about a couple of very specific customer stories, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So real quickly first about ourselves. We're a Salesforce and Scribe consulting partner located out of Boston, Mass. And Stratham, New Hampshire. What that means is that we work with Salesforce and Scribe. They provide the platform, the technology that we work on, and we provide the consulting expertise. In our case, we're very, very focused on the health and life sciences verticals, pretty much only do business in health and life sciences. So we're able to tailor our expertise, our knowledge, and our advantages to our customers to those verticals. We bring a lot to the table specifically around those areas. So our specific our specific technologies that we work with are Salesforce Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, and Health Cloud, which are three main areas that medical device manufacturers will typically work in with Salesforce. We do a lot of communities implementations, communities, of course, being the Salesforce engagement portals for partners, employees, customers, patients, providers, a lot of those types of things. We implement analytics platforms, specifically Einstein Analytics, which is large-scale visualizations of large amounts of data, which is very important to medical device manufacturers. And then we do a lot of integrations. Probably about half of our day-to-day activities is integrating, and Scribe is our integration platform of choice. We take this into many of our customer engagements, if not most of them. The types of integrations we do are ERPs, which we're going to talk about today, but we also implement with EMRs or EHRs, which are electronic medical record systems, or LIMS, Laboratory Information Management Systems. So we integrate with a lot of different back office systems, again, leveraging Scribe in many of those integrations. Our industry expertise is around health and life sciences, or HLS. You'll see that term throughout these slides. And number one is medical device. So helping medical device manufacturers having an integrated sales and stakeholder engagement model with the tight integration to the back office. We work a lot with biotech, and we work with medical providers, so whether that be hospital, behavioral health, alcohol and addiction management, things like that. So the first thing we want to talk about real quickly is why connect? Why are we interested in integration? And there's a number of key data points that come up when we look at integration, starting from the upper left-hand corner of this quadrant. Probably one of the key things is faster and more accurate quoting. How do we get the data that the salesperson needs to them in terms of pricing, product availability, inventory, and allow them to assemble a quote and give it to the customer and have confidence that the pricing that the customer is receiving is accurate. We never want to slow the salesperson down. We want to enable them with all the tools they need to successfully close the deal. And important to that is having a tightly integrated front office CRM and a back office order management system, or an ERP. We also want to streamline the order entry. So once we get that order in, we want to get that revenue delivered as quickly as possible. So we want to have either direct entry of those orders into the ERP, or we want to make sure that the quotes or purchase orders coming to into the ERP match up with what's needed to be entered into the ERP, so there's not a lot of manual intervention in that process. We want to measure sales and marketing production. Many of our customers really don't have a good sense of whether their activities, whether it be provider outreach or whether it be just marketing, how does that actually convert into sales, and how do we measure those activities in terms of actual sales and revenue that's resulting from those sales and marketing activities? Again, you need an integrated environment to be able to really accomplish that effectively. Optimize fact-based decision-making. So again, once you're trying to get all of this data under management and all integrated, you're able to make much better decisions about, where should you focus your business, what products are actually selling the best, what consumables should you be bringing to market or focusing on in terms of your marketing activities. You need the sort of tactical data about your sales, invoicing, orders, things like that in order to really come up with some good data. And then for those medical device manufacturers that engage directly with patients, getting better clinical outcomes can be accomplished by having these integrated environments and integrated devices. So understanding how the device is being used and having that data come back into the system so we can then start measuring those outcomes. And then finally, improve stakeholder management. And there's a lot of stakeholders who can be involved in this process, whether it's distributors and resellers, whether it's other third parties, medical practices, physicians, clinics, things like that. We want to have all of those integrated and understand their activities in a completely integrated data model. So we're going to talk about an interconnection maturity model. We should kind of think of this not as a single leap to having a completely highly integrated environment, but very often it's a set of steps that you go through to improve the function of the enterprise over time. We recognize that this is usually a good model anyways, because you're able to derive the value of your investment faster if you're incrementally improving what you do and learning at each step. So starting at the bottom of the pyramid, it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy. We have a single view of account, products, and pricing. Ton of value just from getting that one thing done. And I'll explain in detail how each one of these is achieved. The next level up is order entry, really optimizing the speed at which you're taking orders in from customers and accurately delivering on those. And then having a bidirectional single view of the customer across the back office and the CRM systems. Above that, we have asset and service contract management. So after the sale, how are we engaging with the customer? How are we tracking the assets that we have, both in terms of devices, consumables, but also service contracts? Do they buy extended warranties? Should we set up an opportunity for the next period's extended warranty based on the expiration of one in the current period? And then finally, device integration. We're starting to do a lot of this work where we're taking all the actual device that's been delivered and then feeding the data back into Salesforce so we can track the way the device is used, the number of consumables that have been used within the device, things like that. So continuing along, our first integration pattern that we're talking about is really what we call the low-hanging fruit, and that is we want a single view of customers. So we're going to take the customers, which are typically the system of record for customer accounts, is the back office. In this case, you can see it says Microsoft Dynamics GP. It could be any ERP, but typically a lot of our customers do use GP. And we move those customer records up to Salesforce as accounts. So we have a single view. So when sales are being entered against accounts in Salesforce, they can be definitively matched up to a customer record within the ERP. Also important to enable sales to effectively quote is to move the items and price lists from the ERP up as products and price books in Salesforce. So then when they're assembling the opportunities and assembling the quotes, they're using the right price list that's associated with those products, and they're only selling products that are active and available to those customers. And then finally, another low-hanging fruit is to move invoices up into Salesforce. Typically, we'll create some sort of custom data model for invoices, either associated back to the original opportunity or back to the account, so they can start getting a real sense of what was the real sales that resulted from the sales activities in terms of both sold products, but what's also been shipped. So we're really enabling the salesperson to sell much more effectively. So the benefits, single view of account. across the enterprise. I work with many customers who have a real challenge with this, where they have a different customer master in their ERP than they have in their CRM. And that makes it very hard to do any level of reporting and any understanding of who they're selling to and what's the sales productivity by different segmentations. Again, we talked about more accurate quoting, so being able to deliver a quote quickly and accurately out of Salesforce using the ERP data, so there's no reconciliation at the back end when we do receive an order or purchase order. Accurate pricing. So pricing is a key challenge that needs to be addressed for many medical device manufacturers, because you've got things like GPOs, manufacturers, associations, and things like that need to be understood when the pricing is actually being provided to the end customer. And generally that's stored within the ERP. And then again, sales production quota attainment. So getting a real understanding, not just of what quotes are being presented to customers, but what are the incoming orders and the invoices that are resulting from those sales. So for that low-hanging fruit, there are a couple key challenges that need to be considered. Among those challenges, and these are not technical challenges, these are business challenges, and they're common to almost every customer we work with. One is reconciling to an initial customer master. So understanding who your customers are when the salespeople have probably been working on whatever CRM system they have up to this date, and now we're trying to reconcile that with an ERP system. So that's typically a manual effort to get those two customer masters to be aligned. And if you've got a lot of customers, it can be particularly challenging. Coming up with a good ship-to, bill-to model. So typically the salespeople are selling into a headquarters, a sales office, but the ERP is really interested in the ship-to, and it can get even more complicated when you have things like drop ships and distributors involved in the process. Territory account ownership. So again, which territory is owned by which salespeople, so you can assign that credit correctly when it comes over to the CRM. And again, gets even more complicated when we start working with distributors and ship-to addresses and things like that can sort of obfuscate which territory the sale actually belongs to. And then things like discounting and pricing rules, especially those that are manually managed out of the ERP or GP in this case. So if they make adjustments based on certain scenarios, then that would be very difficult to replicate in the CRM. So the next level of integration pattern that we think about is is where we add in a bi-directional integration for accounts. So in the last slide, we showed you that accounts were coming from the ERP into Salesforce, but that's not actually the flow of how accounts enter the enterprise. Accounts typically start as a prospect being prospected by the salesperson or the marketing organization. So the account will exist in the CRM before it exists in the ERP. So typically, once we've got that initial flow established, we'll establish a bi-directional flow between the two systems so that the customers are being initiated in the CRM and then pushed to the ERP, which then takes over ownership of that account as the system of record, and then updates are pushed back. Another one that's very common, and I will be candid, very challenging, is order entry through Salesforce. In this case, you need to build a lot of logic in there for things like shipping and other things, but we do that where we want to have the customer service team converting quotes that are given to customers directly into sales orders and pushing those into the ERP. And we do that quite a bit. So the benefits of those two models is we start getting a much higher level of account data quality. We put a level of stewardship around the creation of those accounts. Typically, there's some sort of owner and a customer service team that makes sure the accounts are being created correctly, that the credit information is updated, the ship to bill tos are updated, and things like that. And we really start getting a very solid view of what the customer actually looks like. We eliminate duplicate data entry with the order entry through the front end. So instead of having a quote created and then having to rekey that in as an order in the ERP, we have it entered one time and we're flowing that data right from the CRM into the ERP. So again, faster delivery to the customer, faster resolution of that order, which is speeding the order entry. And the key challenges to that model are Change management. So obviously there's a lot of people involved in order entry, ranging from the customer service to the order entry team, and just some trepidation around the ownership of accounts, but you also have to start engaging with finance and accounting, because those accounts may, the customer master within the ERP may actually be aligned with the general ledger, not necessarily the way the accounts are sold in CRM. So it does broaden the list of stakeholders who are involved, and the significance of entering that data. And understanding some of those complex variances in the rules. So taxes is a key one that comes up. Understanding shipping charges, because that can vary based on the type of product that's being sold and the calculation that's used to determine the shipping charges. Blanket orders, so orders that are left open and continuously drawn down upon. All those type of things can add to the complexity of an order. And then distributor and reseller sales as well can drive that complexity. And those things all have to be kind of thought through as you're implementing your order integration. So our third pattern introduces a couple more concepts here. And these are assets and invoices. So if you have a serialized asset, if you're selling a device that has a unique identifier on it, or a large asset, typically you're going to need to keep track of those assets. So determining what your asset management system, once it's sold to an end customer, is, Salesforce often performs that role. So we'll create assets based on what is actually sold and what comes back up to the invoices. We'll also look through those invoices for things like warranty extensions or upsells of service contracts and things like that, and we'll create service contracts. What this enables is the post-sale, both servicing of the customer much more effectively, but it also allows us to do things like upsell and have renewals and things like that managed within the CRM, because we have a really good idea of what the customer has, what they bought, how long ago it was, things like that. So the benefits here, we're putting the assets and making them visible to both sales and service. So when the customer calls in, we know what they have and we can service them much more effectively. And we're also putting under management contracts and warranties, which are very, very important. And then automating that. So, you know, if the contract is set to expire 90 days in advance, we can generate a new opportunity, assign it to the current salesperson to reach out to that customer and buy a new warranty extension. It's good for the customer and it drives additional revenue into the organization. So some of the key challenges that we'll see with this model is the warranty and service extensions are oftentimes in the orders not positively associated with a given asset. So we might have a couple of assets on the order and one warranty extension. We have to have some kind of logic to figure out which warranty to assign which asset to assign that warranty to. The standard service may not be aligned on the order, so we'll need some logic to automatically, you know, if you buy a product, you get a 12-month warranty, that sort of thing. So we build that logic in a lot of times to just generate a service contract if there isn't a warranty extension present. The start date on the service contract may be other than the ship date. So sometimes calculating when the service contract actually gets enabled. A lot of times it's on the install date, not necessarily the ship date or the invoice date. And a lot of times the content of the invoice data coming back is actually a narrative, so it's actually very difficult to discern, you know, how to build these things out. So sometimes we have to parse that out and build out different records based on the data inside of a text field. And then always a challenge is where you have bill of materials level details that need to be worked out. So we'll look at, you know, things like subcomponents, and then, you know, that can make the actual asset structure much more complicated. So finally, something we've done quite a bit of lately, really over the last couple of years, is IoT. So the last connected part of the enterprise is saying, you know, we sent a device to our customer. Why doesn't the device communicate back to us? And we do that frequently. So we'll track device usage, and that can be, you know, in the case of a large medical device, it might be the consumable usage, number of usages, some performance data, service data, any number of things. In patient-facing devices, oftentimes we'll send back clinical data about how they're using the device and the results of that device. So some of the benefits that we're now looking at is ensuring outcomes. So we can actually see how the device is being used, particularly in a patient context or a provider context. Is it being used properly? And we have some of our customers are sending back exactly that type of data. Are the parameters of the device usage within what we would expect it to be, or do we need to reach out to that provider or patient and educate them on better use of the device? We're able to measure efficacy, so the outcomes that we're actually looking for a medical device manufacturer, particularly one that's FDA approved and maybe needs to be insured, having some evidence that the device is actually providing benefit to the customer can help drive up the level of insurance coverage. Driving consumable sales is another one. So understanding if you've sold 10 consumables and it's been used 8 times, you know that they're coming up on the need for more consumables. So again, driving more revenue and providing better customer service by reaching out to that customer and letting them know they're going to need to purchase new consumables very soon. And ultimately preventing misuse. For example, we have a customer whose device has a consumable with it. That consumable can be watered down, or they can buy it through a third party. Understanding that there's been more uses of the device than there are consumables sold to that customer allows them to take some sort of corrective action and address that with the customer and find out if there's a problem. So some of the key challenges under this model are it requires working with product engineering. So that device may not today provide any sort of data back into the enterprise, but the technology is out there. We've got customers implementing cell phone connections, Bluetooth connections through a mobile app, Wi-Fi connections, any number of ways to get the data back up into the enterprise. And then possible IoT cloud requirements. So there's lots of data coming back and you need to be able to action that data very effectively. And then capturing that data at the correct fidelity. So understanding, if there's tons of data, if there's lots of data coming back from the device, what's the material data that you can actually do something with and make it actionable? So we have a couple customer stories to share, and I'll do this very quickly because we're kind of running to the end of the time. So in this case, we have a medical device manufacturer who's directly engaging with patients to solve a clinical problem. The patient has a medical condition, the patient is issued the device, and the usage data is pushed back from that device into Salesforce Health Cloud and associated with the patient record within Salesforce. The patient is also provided a patient community with a diary function, so they're able to go in and track not just the usage of the device, but what is their experience in using the device. So they complete a baseline survey, and they're also able to map out the progression of the resolution of their condition. That data is also able to be shared with their medical provider, so they can get a better medical outcome. And we can take that data and also provide it to the insurers and say, this device actually has evidence of working for these customers. You should cover it under your plan. And here's another common example. So in many cases, medical device manufacturers may be working with third parties. In this case, we have a customer who's working with multiple DMEs, multiple pharmacies to actually issue their device. So the first time they find out about a customer buying the device, the DME has sent them a report that says, here's all the customers who have bought your device. There's no integration directly to the DME environment, but we want to make it much more automated and push it directly into our Health Cloud instance so we can outreach to that patient and let their provider know what's going on. So in this case, we put up an SFTP site, and we're using Scribe to grab those files, parse them out, and push them into Health Cloud. So again, we can get a better understanding of what's going on with the patients that are being issued devices. And then you'll also notice there's device integration where we're pulling the app data via a mobile app that's connected to Bluetooth to the device back through that same SFTP. It actually goes through a database as well, but it goes through the SFTP, and then we're able to push that into Health Cloud. So we get a complete view of not only what devices are being sent to what patients, but what is their experience using the device. And there's a clinical outreach associated with that where a nurse will reach out to the patient and make sure they're having a good experience with that device. So a couple quick items just to close everything down. One of the things to understand is I presented 4 models, 4 different integration patterns. I do recommend that you try to target the minimum viable product and crawl, walk, and run. So get your basic integrations done first and then gradually introduce new integrations as you move through it. Don't try to boil the ocean, take them on incrementally. So again, tackle those challenges incrementally. And use that to gain deep insight into what's going on in your business. Really think about ways that you can service your customers more effectively, because you're going to have new data that you've never had before. And the platform really supports driving those sort of those deep insights. And it helps to drive better outcomes for all the stakeholders involved in the interaction. So yourself in terms of revenue, better outcomes for the customer, better outcomes for patients, providers, researchers, whoever is using those devices. So with that said, we can take some questions now.
Yep, let me jump in. Thanks, Bill. That was great information. You covered a lot of ground there. Really appreciate those comments. Just as a reminder, so we do have a few questions here already, but there's still time to enter questions. We have a couple minutes that we'll take some questions here. And again, it's at the bottom of your screen. You should see a Q&A tab there where you can enter your question. So you could still have time to do that. We're going to jump in. Bill, I've got one here for you, which is, my product has consumables. Can you help me better understand some ways that this integration could help sell more?
Yeah, so that's a perfect question. So with consumables, one of the typical models is you kind of sell it up front. A lot of times you'll give away the first couple of consumables in the first order, but you want to make sure that you're re-engaging with that patient on a regular basis, or with that customer on a regular basis to sell additional consumables without being, without being annoyance. So one of the things you can do by integrating that data is you can find out how many consumables you sold to a given customer, and you can perform some analytics against that customer. So what type of business are they? How many beds in a hospital, for example, if that's one of the measures that you can use to sort of estimate when they're going to need additional consumables. A better model is that the device is integrated back into the enterprise and you're able to actually see the consumable usage and then use that data to generate sales activities. We can automate it, create new opportunities. And again, it delivers higher revenue, more sales, and a better experience for the customer.
Great, thank you for that. I'm going to try to squeeze in one more. And I know this will probably be the last question, but please enter your questions. We'll take them offline. All questions will be answered. But just for the last question in the live presentation, I sell through distributors. How does the integration handle sold to versus end user customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's really unique by implementation, and it's something that needs to be discussed, and there needs to be an agreed model that covers, as I mentioned, all the way from the general ledger, accounting and finance, through customer service and back up to sales. Sales has a different perspective on the customer than does the order entry customer service team. They're just two different ways of looking at it. One is looking at the front office or the decision maker. The other one is looking at who's actually receiving the thing that's been sold. So very often they're just different lists. A lot of times we'll build out a hierarchical relationship where you'll have a single account with multiple ship-to addresses. And then we'll integrate that data over putting n number of ship-to addresses under a single account. So again, but the process really starts with getting a firm understanding of what that account hierarchy and structure really looks like. And generally it'll be driven out by the ERP, and then we build it out in Salesforce in a way that makes sense for sales.
All right, excellent. Well, we better wrap things up there. So I want to thank Bill Symans again from Saxa Solutions for being today's speaker and sharing all of those insights. On the screen, you can see Bill's contact information if you're interested in learning more about how Bill and the Scribe product can help your particular company. Please feel free to reach out to Bill directly. And you can also use the link there if you want to get your hands dirty with the Scribe Online integration platform. And with that, again, thank you very much for joining us today. Please keep an eye out for announcements of future Scribe webinars. We look forward to seeing you again on another Scribe event. Thank you very much.